Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Hare Krishna devotees. We're reading from the Bhagavad-Gita as it is by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhakti-Vedanta Srila Prabhupada, and we are reading from chapter 3, Karma Yoga, text 35. 35. We're going to do we're going to repeat 35. Shreyan Swadharmo Vagunaha Paradamat Swa Anushtitat Swadharme Nidanam Shreya Paradharmo Bhayavaha Shreyan Swadharmo Vagunaha Paradharmat Swanushtitat Swadharme Nidanam Shreya Paradharmo Bhayavaha Shreyan Swadharmo Vagunaha Paradharmat Swanushtitat Swadharme Nidanam Shreya Paradharmo Bhayavaha Shreyan Swadharmo Vagunaha Paradharmat Swanushtitat Swadharme Nidanam Shreya Paradharmo Bhayavaha. A word for word, Shreyan, far better. Swadharma, one's prescribed duties. Viguna, even faulty. Paradharmat, then duties mentioned for others. Suanistitat, perfectly done. Swadharme, in one's prescribed duties. Nidanam, destruction. Shreya, better. Paradharma, duties prescribed for others. Bhayavaha, dangerous. It is far better to discharge one's prescribed duties, even though faultily, than another's duties perfectly. Destruction in the course of performing one's own duty is better than engaging in another's duties, for to follow another's path is dangerous. Please repeat. It is far better to discharge one's prescribed duties, even though faultily, than another's duties perfectly. Destruction in the course of performing one's own duty is better than engaging in another's duties. For to follow another's path is dangerous. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhakti-Vedanta Srila Prabhupada. One should therefore discharge his prescribed duties in full Krishna consciousness rather than those prescribed for others. Materially, prescribed duties are duties enjoined according to one's psychophysical condition, under the spell of the modes of material nature. Spiritual duties are as ordered by the spiritual master for the transcendental service of Krishna. But whether material or spiritual, one should stick to his prescribed duties even up to death, rather than imitate another's prescribed duties. Duties on the spiritual platform and duties on the material platform may be different, but the principle of following the authorized direction is always good for the performer. When one is under the spell of the modes of material nature, one should follow the prescribed rules for his particular situation and should not imitate others. For example, a Brahmana who is in the mode of goodness is nonviolent, whereas a Kshatriya who is in the mode of passion is allowed to be violent. As such, for a Kshatriya, it is better to be vanquished following the rules of violence than to imitate a Brahmana who follows the principles of nonviolence. Everyone has to cleanse his heart by a gradual process, not abruptly. However, when one transcends the modes of material nature and is fully situated in Krishna consciousness, he can perform anything and everything under the direction of a bona fide spiritual master. In that complete stage of Krishna consciousness, the Kshatriya may act as a Brahmana or Brahmana may act as a Kshatriya. In the transcendental stage, the distinctions of the material world do not apply. For example, Vishwamrita was originally a Kshatriya, but later on he acted as a Brahmana, whereas Parashuram was a Brahmana, but later on he acted as a Kshatriya. Being transcendently situated, they could do so. But as long as one is on the material platform, he must perform his duties according to the modes of material nature. At the same time, he must have a full sense of Krishna consciousness. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasad Bhakti Samadhi Bhakti Tirtha Swantamane Namaste Krishna Padaya Papu Parishtamane Shagor Guna Shakti Bhakti Tirtha Swantamane Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasad Bhakti Samadhi Bhakti Vedanta Srila Prabhupada. So, in this purport, Srila Prabhupada is talking about the Swadharma as opposed to a Sanatan Dharma. So, for instance, to kill is a violation of eternal Dharma, yet a warrior's Swadharma is to kill. So, Krishna is telling Arjuna that he should fight and do his duty as a warrior, because Arjuna was thinking to not do his duty and to go to the forest to act as a Brahma, but yet his nature, because he's passionate, he's going to naturally act passionately as a warrior because that's his nature. So this, in the Prabhupada saying, one should therefore discharge his prescribed duty in full Krishna consciousness rather than those prescribed for others. So in full, if we're in full Krishna consciousness, Prabhupada gives the conclusion first. Actually, in full Krishna consciousness means that there's actually no designations at all. That we should, everything should be done just to please Krishna. But this is referring to, this is in a material sense, what the Swadharma is. Because Arjuna was acting as a person who was in the bodily concept of life. He didn't want to kill his relatives. When Krishna pulled him out in front of all the army and he was seeing his teacher, Dronacharya, and Bhisma, and all his relatives and the persons he was close to, then he decided he didn't want to kill them. So he was in the bodily concept of life. He was identifying with all his relatives and his brothers and like that, his teacher. So this is referring to when we're in the bodily concept of life. I read Srila Prabhupada says, so he's saying Swadharma is one's own occupation when you're in the bodily conception of life. And these are the divisions of the society. And that Swadharma is that which you cannot give up. Whatever your body, the type of body you have, and how it's operated on by the material nature. So Prabhupada says, Dridatu, you have to capture it. To keep your existence, you have to capture it. Brahmana, Sattva, Vaishya, Sudra. So actually, Swadharma means the occupation of the soul. Because in material condition, we do not understand what I am, whether body or soul. But as long as one is in the bodily concept of life, so one has got different occupational duties according to the conception of the body. So the nature is being conducted by the three modes of nature. Therefore, according to one's nature, there is occupational duty. So, the meaning of, so the man's stepping stone, so this is man's, in the body conception of life, the divisions of society of Varnashram, and this is man's stepping stone for spiritual understanding. So human civilization begins from the stage of Varnashram, dharma or specific duties in terms of the specific modes of nature of the body obtained. And I'll read from Bhagavad-Gita 2:31. So here, Krishna is speaking to Arjuna, and he's saying, considering your specific duty as a sattva, you should know that there's no better engagement for you than fighting on religious principles, and so there's no need for hesitation. So out of the 4 orders of social administration, the second order for the matter of good administration is called sattva. Sat means herd. One who gives protection from harm is called sattva. Trayate is to give protection. The Satyas are trained for killing in the forest. A Satya would go into the forest and challenge a tiger face to face and fight with the tiger with his sword. When the tiger was killed, it would be offered the royal order of cremation. This system has been followed even up to the present day by the Satya kings of Jaipur state. The Satyas are especially trained for challenging and killing, because religious violence is sometimes a necessary factor. Therefore, Satyas are never meant for accepting directly the order of sannyas or renunciation. Nonviolence in politics may be diplomacy, but is never a factor or principle. In the religious law books, it is stated, in the battlefield, a king or Satya, while fighting another king envious of him, is eligible for achieving the heavenly planets after death, as the Brahmanas also attain the heavenly planets by sacrificing animals in the sacrificial fire. So he goes on to say that killing on the battlefield, religious principles, and killing animals in the sacrificial fire are not considered to be acts of violence. And then he goes on to say that there are 2 kinds of swadharma, specific duties. As long as one is not liberated, one has to perform the duties of his particular body in accordance with religious principles in order to achieve liberation. Actually, when I was researching this, I was thinking about my experience in Gita Nagari. I was the pujari there. And because we were all pujaris, and the only thing we could actually do, because there weren't many devotees there, was to take care of the deities. That was our total focus. So there was no real like development of Gita Nagari, because we all had that same nature. We were taking care of the duties, and that's what we could do the best. So there was no economic development in Gita Nagari, and even though the bills got paid, but there was no real economic development. And then later on, some other devotees came who were from South Africa, and obviously they were Vaishyas, because now Gita Nagari is developing a business, it has the economic, so you can see practically each person's nature. So you can see that even though like sometimes these devotees have to dress the deities, but their nature is to make money, to make economic development. They are able to do that. So now they're making yogurt, they're selling milk, they're making cheese, and they're buying more cows. So there's now become an economic base. But when I was there from 95 until 2010, but they came, I think, in 2005, after Guru Maharaj left his body. They took over, and so now it's prospering very nice. They have money, but yet still the deities are being taken care of. And so practically, if we, we can see, that everyone has a particular nature, and that was a practical example of seeing, what was happening in terms of, what happened when we were just taking care of the deities, and what was happening now that they're there, So, so I'll go through the different meanings of each varna. It's Sat means injury, and Tra is one who liberates or protects, one who protects a human being from being hurt by others. And then Brahmana is one who knows Brahman, the absolute truth. And then Vaishya, those who know Visampati, the economic problem. And then you have the Sudra, who are laborers. And those who are very dutiful are called Swadharma Nishta. So we are reading today in the Srimad Bhagavatam. We went through this chapter already, but I'd like to read something out of it. Oh, here it is. No, first I'll read the Nectar of Devotion. I remember when, I forgot the devotee's name who was here. He was a devotee who went to help out in the Brooklyn Temple. What is his name? Anyway, he's a Prabhupada disciple. I can't think of his name, but he said that when he was, when Srila Prabhupada was giving class, and when they gave class, they always read out of the Nectar of Devotion. They had both the Bhagavad-Gita and the Nectar of Devotion. Okay, page 95. Okay. In the Skanda Purana, it is said that those who are attached to ritualistic activities, the four orders of social life, and the four orders of spiritual life are considered devotees. But when devotees are actually engaged in offering service to the Lord directly, there must be Bhagavatas, or pure devotees. Those who are engaged in fruitive activities or prescribed duties according to the four orders of social and spiritual life are not actually pure devotees, but still, because they are offering the result to the Lord, they are accepted as devotees. When one has no such desire, but acts spontaneously out of love of God, such a person must be accepted as a pure devotee. The conditioned souls who have come into contact with the material world are all more or less desirous of lording it over material nature. The system of Varnashram and the prescribed duties under this system are so designed that the conditioned soul may enjoy in the material world according to his desire for sense gratification, and at the same time gradually become elevated to spiritual understanding. So everything in the Vedas, every system that the Lord has created for human beings is eventually meant to bring them to understand their constitutional position as a servant of the Lord, and eventually offer service to Him unmotivated. Aniparasita Sumyan Gana Karma. Did I say that? Anavritam? Is that right? Okay. Under these prescribed duties of Varna and Ashram, there are many activities which belong to devotional service in Krishna consciousness. So then he goes on to say the devotees who are householders accept the ritualistic performances as prescribed duties, etc. Then there was one more, 111 and 112. Some scholars argue that simply by following the principles of Varna and Ashram, one can gradually rise to the perfections reached by practicing devotional service. But this argument is not accepted by the great authorities. Lord Chaitanya also condemned this idea while he was talking with Ramananda Rai about the gradual development of devotional service. He rejected the idea of the importance of Varnashram Dharma when it was put forward by Ramananda Rai. He said that this advancement of Varna and Ashram is merely external. There is a higher principle. In Bhagavad-Gita also, the Lord says that one has to give up all other principles of elevation and take simply to the method of Krishna consciousness. This will help one in achieving the highest perfection of life. And but I wanted to talk about also that there are some emergency situations where one may have to do another's duties, but these are just in emergency situations. Also in Kitsanari, even though we were pujaris and we took care of the devotees, we also had, because there were hardly any devotees there, we had to like clean the temple room, we had to clean the ashram, especially when guests were coming, make up the beds, clean the rooms. So we had to clean the stove when we had mild cleanup. So this was a time when we had to do the necessary. We may have been just worshiping the deities, but we also had to do everything else that had to be done to keep the temple running nicely. So that was also during the time when doing the necessary, when you would have to do what was necessary. And in terms of emergency situations, I was reading about King Venu. He was because he was so demoniac and he thought he was the supreme person of Godhead, and wouldn't take any advice from the saintly persons, the brahmanas. So they were trying to be kind to him and polite without offending him. So they, would be approaching him to ask him, what you're doing is not right, you're supposed to be taking care of the citizens, etc. But because he was so demoniac, he dismissed them. So in this instance, even though the brahmanas are not violent and they didn't want to kill him, but they were forced to kill him, by mantras. They killed him, because he was, disrupting the whole societal order. So we can see today that, everything's in chaos. And actually, too, because there's only sudras who are, governing everyone, we can see that so many things are happening on the earth, such natural disasters and wars, just because mostly the slaughtering of the cows. So everything is in chaos, the whole world is in chaos, and the only saving grace is the devotees who are going out chanting and spreading the holy name and trying to, give people Krishna consciousness, or at least give them the Maha Mantra. So I'd like to ask if anyone knows of any other situations where a person had to act out of in the scriptures, out of his actual dharma. Can anybody think of any other instance? Okay. But then the scriptures are full of, examples, great kings who were very concerned and took care of their progeny. And also I thought of Lord Ramachandra, who went out among the citizens to hear what they were saying. And because they were upset about the fact that he accepted Sita back as the queen, even though she had lived in another man's house for such a long time, then this disturbed him because they were disturbed. So that was when he decided, that he would send her to the forest, so they would be a little more peaceful and the citizens would be content, a little bit happier than they were with him at the time. There was some other things I wanted to read. Learning 711. Learning 711. 711, 17. Oh, this is about the emergency situations. This is, we're in this canto, but we're in further along in the chapter. But Canto 7, Chapter 11, Text 17 says, except in a time of emergency, lower persons should not accept the occupational duties of those who are higher. When there is such an emergency, of course, everyone but the Sattva may accept the means of livelihood of others. The occupational duty of a Brahmana should not be accepted by persons in lower social orders, especially Vaishyas and Sudras. For example, an occupational duty of the Brahmana is to teach Vedic knowledge, but unless there is an emergency, this professional duty should not be accepted by Sattvas, Vaishyas, or Sudras. Even a Sattva cannot accept the duties of a Brahmana unless there's an emergency, and then even if he does so, he should not accept charity from anyone else. Sometimes Brahmanas protest against our Krishna consciousness movement for creating Brahmanas from Europeans, or in other words, from Malechas and Yavanas. This movement, however, is here supported in Srimad Bhagavatam. At the present moment, society is in a chaotic condition, and everyone has given up the cultivation of spiritual life, which is especially meant for the Brahmanas. Because spiritual culture has been stopped all over the world, there is now an emergency. And therefore it is now time to train those who are considered lower and condemned, so that they may become Brahmanas and take up the work of spiritual progress. The spiritual progress of human society has been stopped, and this should be considered an emergency. Here it is solid support from Narada Muni of the movement known as Krishna consciousness. That's really, really nice, you know, that Prabhupada came because the situation in the world was such an emergency, and he took the hippies and all the flower children from the U.S., from the Western world, and made them Brahmanas, and that's how the movement grew. So I don't have much more to say because we've done this before, but if there's any input, any additional, any corrections, or any questions, or something someone would like to add, please do so. Hare Krishna, Babu. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
I was thinking Dronacharya, he was a Brahman.
Yes. Yes, it's true. Yeah.
I'll just repeat it. So, Dronacharya was actually a Brahman, and then he defeated, who did he defeat? His friend, who was his friend?
Drupada.
And then he took part in
Yeah. Yes.
I was thinking also maybe it's the worst way around. Haridas Thakur, he was like less than a Sudra.
Yes. He was a Muslim, was he?
Yeah, that's considered the other one.
Yes.
But then he actually acted as the highest Brahman or Vaishya.
Yes.
You just asking for some.
Yes, thank you. Yes, it's true. Actually, anyone else? Think of any? Mataji? Oh, yeah.
Question about that. Transgression said to follow another path is dangerous.
Yes, when I read that,
Was that dangerous for Haridas Thakur to follow that? The Namacharya, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gave him
Any answer for that one? Who's think? For Haridas Thakur?
Yeah,
She can.
at the end of the purport,
Yes.
Prabhupada says that when you come to the spiritual platform, there's no restrictions. And he gives the example of Vishwamitra and Parashuram.
Okay.
So, in today's purport, at the end, Prabhupada gives the example of Vishwamitra and Parashuram, that when one comes to the transcendental platform, then the rules do no longer apply.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Right there. Thank you. Yes, and it's a long story how Vishwamitra became a Brahmana. He went through a lot of austerities to become a Brahmana. Do you know that story?
There was also Yamunacharya.
I don't know about him. Mm-hmm.
Yamunacharya, who wrote that verse, he was previously a king, and then he wrote the verse that comes in Bhagavad-Gita, whenever I think of sex, I spit at the thought, because he became a Vaishnava and he gave up all his kingdom.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thank you. Another person.
Actually, I've often wondered, why is it dangerous? If you perform something another service for do it perfectly, you must have some capacity for that. Why is it dangerous?
Well, I'll just say that it disrupts the whole social order if, say, a person who doesn't have the nature of a Kshatriya and he acts as a Kshatriya, say a Brahmana, like, okay, for me, because I'm a Pujari, I can't imagine trying to kill somebody or being in that position. You know, I would probably get killed myself rather than, you know, have to kill someone or you know, or have to rule them. That's not my nature. My nature is usually background. I like, you know, like reading, studying, researching Vedic knowledge. I like dressing the deities, and I'm content with that. But to put me in another situation in terms of, say, Kshatriya, I wouldn't be able to help anybody.
No, but in this verse it's saying, even if you do it perfectly, so that means somebody can do it. They're capable of it.
Okay, maybe anyone have a response to that? Or the Langala?
So, in the beginning of the class, you gave the example of Arjuna, how he's a Kshatriya, but he decided he didn't want to commit violence, and so he wanted to take on the nature of a renunciant who lived in the forest. So, I mean, Krishna argued against that on many different levels, but one of them was that if he doesn't do his duty, then he will be thought of as a very tall person, he'll be laughed at like that. So the intention is that Krishna was saying that if he didn't act according to his nature, he wouldn't be able to live with himself afterwards. He would be very nice in the beginning, but it would create disharmony. And similarly, it will create disharmony in the society. People do not act according to their proper natures. The Prabhupada says that this Varnashram in its simple form is actually existing everywhere, even when it's not established, because people by nature are sometimes leaders and sometimes not. And of course, the other example is that now we have Sudras who are leading countries, or Vaishyas, at the best Vaishyas. They're interested only in economic development. So they're actually missing the whole point of what leading the people means. So that's an example of how it's dangerous. Because they're not protecting the spiritual life of the citizens like they're supposed to. So in that way, they're running the country, they're promoting economic development, but they're not protecting the citizens from future birth and death. They're not actually doing anything of harm to them.
Right. They're not protecting their spiritual lives, and they're focusing on money, exploiting the citizens.
I had a practical example. I did, before I came to India, I was studying social work, and I did my placement in a religious agency in the Salvation Army. But we're working with people who are dependent on the government. So the government is providing social welfare for the people, like for unmarried mothers, and they think they're doing good. But the result of that is that these unmarried mothers are simply sitting on a benefit. I had a case study that I used in my final submission. One mother, she was coming for food parcels. She had a government payment according to how many children she had. So she had 6 children. She was like getting maybe $800 a week. She was getting a lot of money. But she was coming for a food parcel. Why? Because she doesn't know how to use the money. You can't just give money to people if they're not qualified to use it. These people would be spending their money on higher purchase. They have the latest videos, the latest TVs, the latest fridge, the freezer, and everything else. And there's no money left to buy food for the children. And this is an atheistic government who doesn't know how to look after the people. It's not even the spiritual life that's missing. They can't even keep the people properly engaged. Like the king is supposed to keep all of his citizens engaged properly according to their natures. Unemployment shouldn't be existing in society. Everyone should be employed in some place according to their nature. So because these Vaishyas are in control and these Sudras are in control, they don't understand that. They think they can have economic development and they think they're doing good, but people are not engaged in their proper duties and they're being more and more degraded. And Bharata Sankara is getting more and more.
So that's how it's dangerous to the society. You have a more discussion? Take them.
It makes me think how actually the whole direction of society is going against this, because everybody's being encouraged to try and achieve, be very ambitious. Everybody could be prime minister or president or something like that. And also the question of women, should they be, because my feeling is that the basis of society is strong families and children brought up well, and that's only women can really do that properly. And if they're aspiring to be prime ministers and presidents and all that, and or business leaders and things like that, they may do it very well in some respects, but then what's neglected is the most important thing, which is like children.
Yes.
Brought up in a good family upbringing. Because otherwise they're Bharata Sankara, really, right?
Yes.
So I was just wondering what you think, because basically now the whole tenor of society, at least in the West, I think, is that women should be encouraged to achieve just the same thing as men do. And actually, if you say that that's not right, then you're a demon, basically. But my feeling is it's not right because then families are neglected, and only the women can do that. The women are the actual fulcrum, the most important element that binds families together. And if they're off working and achieving great things, it's really causing a lot of problems. I just wonder maybe you have different.
Well, I can only speak from my own experience, how I grew up. My mother never worked, and my father was in the army, and there were 11 of us. And because my mother was home all the time, it created an environment of security for us, to know that she was always there. And if there was any difficulties in school or whatever difficulties we had, I just remember it being very secure. She would, you know, like, we felt loved and cared for because she was always there. Whatever difficulties, anything, we could always go to her, or whatever difficulties we had in school or any kind of difficulties, we knew that she was there. Now, in terms of the modern society, I also think that the mothers, too, are the backbone of the home. They're the ones that provide the warmth and the love and the caring. And actually, it's said that the mother is the first guru. So, I mean, I'm old-fashioned in that way. I also believe in breastfeeding. I believe that the nurturing of the mother is very important. But I won't go further than that to get into a thing that women can't be lawyers and this and that.
I mean, they can, obviously, they can do it.
They can do it, but then what happens to the children?
Yes, at a great cost. That's my really. They can do it. They can.
Well, she has.
I mean, Prabhupada made that statement about women being gurus. He said, yes, they can, but not many. Because there's not everybody has the same psychophysical nature. Not all women have the same nature. Some of them are leaders, some of them are scholars, so some of them can be, but not very many. Because as a rule, they have a role to play. So like that, we can, there are some, I'm not. And yeah, I grew up, my mother never worked either, so I don't know. But last time I visited my Mayavadi friend. She works as a social worker in the hospital when I was last in New Zealand. And there was a big poster on the wall. It's something to do with you don't need to breastfeed your children anymore. Like after 6 weeks you go back to work and you don't breastfeed your children. The hospital is promoting this. That's how the society is being degraded. Because the economic push is there. People don't want to have mothers having 9 months off when they have a baby. So let's get them back to work in 6 weeks and forget the baby, someone else will look after the baby. The whole society becomes degraded because of this, people not acting properly as it should be, protecting people from harm, spiritually and materially.
And they have what you call now latchkey children. They come home to an empty house. And then what happens, you know, especially if they're boys, you know, they just get into trouble. And the computer, you can't monitor what they're doing. So that's a whole, you know. But I also like to recommend something I read. It's from Krishna.com, and it's called Dharma, Nature, Duty, and Divine Service. And it's a very nice article about Dharma and Srila Prabhupada's translation of Dharma and how it came about in the ontological meaning. It's a very, very, very nice article by Garuda Das. So I recommend it if you'd like to read more about Dharma. Thank you. Hare Krishna.